Start us off, Carter.
And welcome to the Game Award Awards, your go to show for evaluating the Game Awards. What was the best trailer? Who got disrespectfully played off the most? And why does Jeff Keighley try so hard?
And the Muppets are there.
What? Oh, yeah, they were that one year.
And this year.
Oh, yeah.
Statler and
When were
Waldorf
they
made
this
it.
year?
Statler and Waldorf made an appearance earlier.
See, that's the exact right energy for the Game Awards because of how cynical they are. I don't know. I've become very jaded about the Game Awards this year, only because, I don't know. Look, Keeley seems like a cool dude. I appreciate that he does this. I appreciate that he puts the effort in. But, he seems to be stuck where it's like, do you want to do an actual award show and, acknowledge the artistry of video games? Or do you want to be nice to the companies and not rock the boat at all and bring up that there's a lot of layoffs and stuff? And he tends to choose the former. So I'm kind of ambivalent. Also, this wasn't my best bit. I apologize to the American public, but you know what? Sometimes you're on 5 hours of sleep and you just go for the low hanging fruit. Like the cherries Pac Man would eat, or the Wampa fruits that Crash Bandicoot would have.
Pac-Man also made an
Or,
appearance.
oh, yes. Well, Pac Man's always. Man, that dude, look, say what you want about Pac Man. Yes, he doesn't really have a face. Yes, he has no definable, he has no pores or texture. But that man networks. He gets to go to he goes to all the parties. He glad hands. He says waka 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 waka. He's cool at the clubs. That's why he's where he is today.
And
He's a,
sometimes he
he's a
wears
role
oven
model for the
mitts.
people. Yes, sometimes he wears oven mitts for no particular reason because that was the style at the time.
The style of the time of Smash Bros.
Basically, yes. Well, no, they came up with that design before Smash Bros. I
I
think
know.
because there's
I'm going off of Smash Bros.
oh yeah, but yeah, no, that was the style at the time. You either had gloves or you were a glove person. In the case of Glover,
Yeah.
see that you were talking about the podcast where we do narrative stuff in universe, and I brainstormed some ideas for that. I got to make a sheet for that. But I want to do just a whole podcast about all of the forgotten platform mascots. You know, there's that episode of Smiling Friends with Gwimbly, who's like a real he's kind of Crash Bandicoot or not Crash Bandicoot. Well, kind of that, and kind of like Banjo Kazooie adjacent. And I was just thinking about it, it's like, man, Glover, Croc, Ty the Tasmanian Tiger. It also sent me into this existential tailspin about Sonic inexplicably because I'm like, why does Sonic get to keep exist? Like, how did Sonic make it through so many bad games while Sly Cooper's gone, crashes in and out? We haven't had any Spyro stuff. I don't know. It's not important. Ladies and gentlemen, this is actually Carter and Kevin Explain Football. Carter here.
And I have some takes on video games too.
Yes. We'll drag the rest of the Cast Pod crew on to give our spite. We'll do a hot toddy hot take video game chat. I've never had a hot toddy before. I'm not 100% sure what it is. I just know it has booze in it.
I'm looking it up. Hot toddy
Yes.
is it's a whiskey recipe. You just need hot water, whiskey, honey, and lemon. There you
Oh,
go.
I assumed it had coffee or something in it. Because you get it at ski lodges.
No,
Huh.
it's like a more of a cough syrup style drink.
Oh no.
Well, no, it's not actually made with like cough syrup or tastes like cough syrup, but it's like the clearing up the throat kind of vibe. It's actually very
God,
simple to
people.
make, and you can also use
God,
spices as well.
God, people in the past were fucking degenerates, man. But
Dwarf.
speaking of festive booze, it is December. We just got through week 14, which was our second week of December. We are really in the home stretch, and I don't know about you, but I feel like so far less is settled than I feel like it usually is at this time. Is more settled or less settled? I can't 100%
I
tell.
I think it's the way you look at it. I feel like usually
Right.
by now, I think the bigger thing is less of a playoff picture and like that stuff, and
Mhm.
more of eliminated teams. I feel like
Right.
we
More, yeah.
that's what's making it so weird because there's only one team that is out of the NFC playoff picture, There's other
Right.
teams that have technically like less than 1% chance, and they need like everything under the sun to go their way to make the playoffs. But
Which is utterly impressive because we've seen some real diarrhea football this year,
yeah,
and yet like Dallas still technically has a chance. Chicago still technically
the
has the
Panthers
chance.
still technically have a chance. Like
Yeah, even
usually by
the
now there's
Bengals.
usually by now there's a lot more eliminations. So
Right. I also think a part of it too is like, okay, we had a couple really quick lock-ins. Like the Bills,
yes,
Chiefs, Eagles, and Lions kind of all locked in their playoff tickets and kind of record time.
yeah,
Only two of them obviously have gotten their division win. But I feel like usually at this point, the only division that really feels chaotic, like most divisions, it's like, okay, well, we haven't decided the division winner, but we're pretty close. And that's the case in some places. Like, that's, Detroit and Philly, barring complete calamity, are going to lock up their divisions. But,
yeah,
like, usually at this point, the only one where it's like, I have no idea who's going to win this division is the NFC South, because that's just a bunch of lunatics punching. It's like the Mud Brothers, or whatever they're called, at the Ren Fair, on the Ren Fair circuit. Just two bros just beating the crap out of each
yep,
other in a big old bucket of mud. But this year it's like, okay, literally any team from the NFC West basically the NFC
yeah,
West has become the NFC Southwest,
yeah,
which you think would give Arizona a slightly higher chance, but evidently not. The AFC South, we're looking at a possible. There's still windows for upsets, and Baltimore and Pittsburgh are fighting for that division win. Like we still have
yeah.
a lot of very
It's
important specific things that normally are decided by now, or at
yeah,
least close to being decided.
yeah. It's gonna be a lot of battles. It's going to be like if you're not battling for your division spot at this point, you are like you're battling for like only like I think 3 or 4 divisions are actually battling for like wild card seeds. Like
Right, right.
if you look at the NFC picture, first of all, the Eagles have locked in a spot, the Lions have locked in a spot. So that frees up uh, 2 more divisional spots, which Bucks and Falcons are neck and neck, and NFC West is its own special entity that will change. Literally every single game can change the standings.
Right.
And
An
then,
interesting.
yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
I want to say, and then so it's like there's that. But then for like the wild card teams, NFC North has a huge case going for it, and then everyone else is battling for like that last spot.
Mhm. Yes, and we also have a pretty exciting, and we should probably talk. I guess we can talk about it a little bit. I finally started doing my like, all right, I'm going to actually look at who's eligible in the draft and stuff. We have a very interesting race to the bottom between like arguably like 4 or 5 teams right now. Basically, all the eliminated teams, which are 1, 2, 3,
It's
4,
five.
5, 6, 7.
Just kidding. What?
It's 7. New York, Vegas, New England, Tennessee, the Jets, the Jaguars, and the Browns. And technically, Carolina's in that pool too, but because their division is wackadoo, they still have a chance to make the playoffs. But I'm going to pretend they're eliminated just for the. So that would make it 8. And they all basically have the same record. But anyway, a very interesting week of games that both helped shape that picture, but also the playoff picture as a whole. Shall we dive in?
Yes, we shall.
All right. So our first highlight of the week, I would be remiss if it wasn't The Simpsons. So, yes,
Oh my
for
God.
Monday Night Football, the Bengals played the Cowboys. And you're probably thinking, well, both of these teams, while still technically eligible for the playoffs, are most likely out than in. The vibes on both of them have kind of been bad. Burrow and Chase have become the Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani of the NFL, where it's like, no one's done this since Tungsten O'Doyle. Anyway, they lost by 30. And the Cowboys are just, they're busy. Again, they're asking about the moon. They're not interested in winning football games. They're interested in litigating the existence of moons, apparently. So you're probably thinking, why would we have this game in the highlights? Because before the season started, ESPN, a subsidy of Disney, decided that they would use the motion capture technology they used last year for the Toy Story game to do a Simpsons-themed broadcast.
Oh my God.
So,
Let's.
where to even begin with this? So it was like the B team of like Mina Kimes, Dan Orlovsky, and one other person who I can't remember. Simpsonified? It's Simpsona feels like the correct term. Yeah, they're Simpsonas, which Jesus Christ.
I feel like you're diving too deep into the logistics.
Yeah, I'm litigating. Yeah, I'm Jesus Christ. Multiple characters on the field were Simpsons characters. So often Cooper Rush was portrayed by Homer Simpson.
Yeah.
Lisa Simpson was often Jamar Chase. We had
was,
sideline. Who was Bart?
Typically Joe Burrow.
That's really funny. Yes, and we also had like the actual voice actors occasionally chiming in to do interviews or give their feedback. So obviously the tech is still just a pinch of jank. They haven't quite figured it out yet, which is fair because football is a chaotic sport and it's hard to get like all those specific movements. There's a reason why Madden has to spend months making entire animation decks. But in terms of dumb fun on a game that otherwise wouldn't matter, and absolutely probably would have gotten flexed if it wasn't for the fact that they already paid to make the animation.
Yeah.
I would say it was pretty fun. And it was actually a pretty fun game on its own right.
Going into it, I would have said they should have been flexed for sure. But I think after the fact, I think it did just good enough to be the Simpsons game because it was pretty competitive throughout the entire thing. There was a lot of stuff,
yes,
and the game had no real stakes to it. Like, I feel like if you're gonna do that to a game, like ARify it, try and make it watchable for youth and stuff, you don't want it to be like a bigger or more important game. You want it to be like the game that kind of means nothing.
Right. Like what was the Toy Story one? It was the London game that was Jacksonville, Atlanta.
Yeah, it was Jacksonville, Atlanta, which is like that game really meant nothing in the long scheme of things.
Right. Instead it just gets to be fun where it's like, man, imagine losing your fantasy football playoff chances because of Ralph Wiggum.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a pretty exciting game. A couple things to unpack. Finally, of all the times for Dallas to figure out how to have a running game, it's Rico Dowell who has been on kind of a heater. I don't know why they bothered. Like, they were trying so hard to make Ezekiel Elliott a thing. And Rico Dowell, over the last few weeks, has had 86 yards, 112, 133. And granted, Washington, New York, Cincinnati are not necessarily lighting the world on fire. But, like, considering how absolutely anemic the Dallas running game has been, that's not insignificant. And we would be remiss if we did not acknowledge that Jamar Chase is having an all-time heater year. And, like, again, yes, it is so infuriating that this team, like, they're not going to do the Bills thing from last year where it's like a team that's in the middle of the pack rises up. Because by any reasonable metric, he should be getting MVP votes. He currently has 93 receptions, 1,319 yards, and 15 touchdowns. He's on pace to win the Triple Crown, and it's not that close other than the yards, I believe. And let me just rattle off, as people pointed out, just the very unique season he's had. Just 3 of his stat lines. Against Baltimore, 11 catches, 264 yards, 3 touchdowns. Against Baltimore, a different time. 10 catches, 193 yards, 2 touchdowns. Against Washington, 6 catches, 118 yards, and 2 touchdowns. For reference, that means you got almost 20 yards every single time you touch the ball. And tonight, I guess last night, or 2 nights ago, I'm tired. 14 catches, 177 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Again, it breaks my heart. We need to have an award that's like I guess to use the Simpsons metaphor, the cake that's like, at least you tried before it gets dumped in the trash. Because it is kind of wild that Joe Burrow and him have been having such a great year that's going to is going to get lost to the sands of time. I think it really affirms, like, no, you really need to keep this core together. You really should have paid Jamar Chase last offseason because he's going to get more money now.
Yeah. He's making a case for himself to get paid even more.
Yes. I do think it puts Well, go ahead.
I would say I think Jamar Chase if like say he was like doing as good proportionally, it's just they eked out some more wins and were like
Mhm.
a bigger playoff contender. I think with the season Jamar Chase would be at is currently having, his name would be into the fray of things more, like for MVP and shit.
Mhm. But yes, it also puts T. Higgins in an interesting spot because it's like, as good as he's been, he has been hurt, which I guess is kind of the Bengals' argument. But it really is like, I was listening to someone talk about it. It's the most Bengali Bengal thing to ever happen. Of like, this exact same thing happened with Carson Palmer and Chad Ochocinco. It's the same thing that happened with Andy Dalton and AJ Green. And like, this is the biggest version of that because the pedigree is so much higher than those last two, and yet you're just not going to be able to achieve anything because a combination of like spending money in the wrong places, not developing talent, and when you do develop talent, the Bengals, they're one of the lowest cash spending teams in the league. I will say the other big takeaway from this game is one, Mina Khan seems to have been the only person who religiously watches Simpsons.
Mm-hmm.
At one point, I believe it was when Milhouse fumbled a punt, which ended up being kind of the backbreaker because it looked like the Cowboys were going to get the ball with a short field and go kick the game-winning field goal. But they fumbled the punt. And I believe her exact words were, Milhouse, this is what it's like when doves cry. Which I'm like, that's like a 4 layers deep. That's not just saying everything's coming up Milhouse. You gotta dig for that one.
Yeah, no. I love that, like, there's like deep cut references throughout the games.
Yes. And I will say, it did become confusing because I didn't get the memo on who is who. So I'm like, wait, who the fuck is Lisa Simpson? Who's just like spin moving her way into the end zone. I will say, if nothing else, it does affirm like the Nick game thing of like, man, isn't it cool when people have like smoke trails and like lightning beams coming out of their hands? Like that should just become standard for broadcast.
Did you see the opening, like where they say where they're from and stuff? Because they did that with
Yes.
them too, which is also funny. Sorry, completely
Yes.
cutting you off on something like. Just
No,
what was
no,
going
you're
on in my
fine.
brain.
I just appreciate, like, the effort was there. There was charm. Again, this was, like, the perfect game for it. It was interesting because it seems like they couldn't quite decide if they wanted it to be, like, the Nickelodeon Kids broadcast or not. Like, they couldn't figure out, like, what's the target audience for this.
They did some
But I
things,
was respected.
They didn't do other, like, they did some, like, trails and stuff. I feel like there were so many, like, ways it could have gone. And it was done well enough that I'm willing to entertain another like one of those next year. I think doing more than one a year is kind of asinine.
Right. Pick a theme, commit to it, do one a year. So next year do like Bluey, and then the year after that do Moana or something.
Yeah, I liked The Simpsons better than Toy Story. I felt like the Toy Story it looked more off than the Simpsons one.
Yeah, it felt like they couldn't figure out what they wanted it to look like.
Yeah.
Or how to incorporate the toys.
But I feel like this was a better one. Like maybe stick with The Simpsons, keep going that theme for a bit, or like switch, like really hit some like out of left field things. Like if it was Bluey, that would be hilarious.
The Great Mouse Detective. Oh God, what would? So God, I'm just trying to think of who would do what in Blueyverse.
Muffin.
Well,
would
Muffin would.
Linebacker.
Yeah, that would. Oh God. Yeah, Bobby Wagner as portrayed by Muffin.
Just running through like linemen.
The little gnomes holding up the little gnomes holding up the chain gang stuff.
That would be
yes.
funny.
Well, I'll brainstorm this. Yeah. The grannies. Oh God, if it was a snow game, you could have the grannies being on the snowplow.
There's a lot of options.
Yes. Plus, like, you need more Bluey like, again, something someone pointed out is, like, all of the Bluey episodes are, like, copyrighted 2021 and 2022 because they only got one huge 3-season order. Yeah. It was, like, after the pilot was made, they're, like, 3 seasons. So they and again, as people pointed out, it's like, man, those last 2 episodes really feel like a definitive ending. But from developing those episodes, releasing them in Australia, getting the distribution rights to Disney, and then releasing them in the US, a funny thing happened. Your quirky little BBC-funded, or Australian BBC-funded show became the biggest fucking thing on the planet. Yeah. And now there's an expectation that it's going to go on forever. which is interesting because they've already talked about like what they're gonna do for the kid voice actors. But I digress. This isn't the Bluey cast. We'll do that as an April Fool's joke. This is football. So next highlight, Lions.
Yeah, it's the Lions. Another.
Yeah.
Honestly, I thought this was a great performance versus
Yes.
the Packers.
Again, the Thursday night games this year have been inexplicably really good. Well, most of them. Obviously, there's ones that still suck, but it's been much better than usual.
No, there's been some duds. Let's not deny that, but I feel like this season, especially towards this later part, has been really good and entertaining, which is nice. Even the current one that's happening is a freaking just grinding grudge match where it's 7:44 currently left in the second quarter, and it's 3-0 still.
Oh, of course. Then, of course, the Rams forget how to play offense now. Oh boy. Yeah, but you know what?
You're fine.
Wait, Faye. Well, no, I mean for my like in real life team I root for, not fantasy.
Yeah.
The only thing I'm mad about fantasy is Daniels and Henry have much better matchups this week than next week. Yeah, I need the Eagles to spiral just a pinch more. But anyway, so honestly, the big thing everyone's talking about with this game is the final drive of the game. The Lions have been marching downfield. The Packers had just tied it up with a field goal. A pretty decent back and forth game. The Lions had a lead for most of the game, but a ill-timed in the second half, an ill-timed interception and an ill-timed turnover on downs allowed Green Bay to just start playing catch-up. They tie it with a field goal. The Lions march downfield, and on a 4th and 1, at the 21, easily could kick the field goal. They'd be up by 3 with about 40-ish seconds left. Easy circumstances. Dare them to go 70-ish yards downfield. Dan Campbell says, "No thanks."
I'm Dan Campbell.
Yes. And like a lot of people have been like waxing poetically about this because it almost ended in disaster. Jared Goff trips, but manages, because no one touched him, to get up, hand the ball off, and David Montgomery gets the 7 yards he needs for the first down. And they run out the clock and just, they call game. And again, it's like, I mean, there's only so much you can say about the Lions at this point. One, it's having blind faith in your players. It's like you have Penei Sewell, who's kind of taking the offensive line championship belt, which is hilarious because he plays right tackle. It's always like you got to play left tackle, but they draft him and they're like, actually, our left tackle's pretty good. So what if we just had him?
What if we switched sides?
Yes. But yes, probably the best tackle in the NFL right now. You might as well use him. You have a chance to like enact like psychic harm to your division rival. Really do like the chain snatching thing. Someone pointed out Matt LaFleur actually has a really bad record against the Lions. I believe it is despite his success, despite having multiple 13-3 seasons, I believe his record versus the Lions is... I really need to get these stats more clear. What is Packers? How is this so hard to find?
You're the one looking it up. I don't know how you're looking.
Yes, but the point, like he loses to the Lions a lot, including Aaron Rodgers last year, where all they had to do was beat the Lions, who were completely eliminated, and Jamal Williams went on a heater. That's his famous "Don't let these tears fool you. It's all dog under this mug" speech. But yes, for some reason, the Lions have absolutely had his number. And if you're going to be the favorite, if you're going to be the contender, you kind of have to do that.
Yeah, you really have to have, like, if you are, like, the top team, you have to have everybody on watch. You can't get soft until you're clinching what you want.
Yes.
Regardless of it, it's planning your next team or working around this year, you gotta like I don't think the Lions like, as long as the Eagles are giving the Lions like you slip up I think if the Lions slip up once and the Vikings win, I was looking at the whole like if this happens, this like the scenarios for like if the Eagles win, and I think it's if the Eagles win out and the Lions and Vikings lose one each, the Eagles get the conference seed, I believe, in the bye or something to that nature, and it's just like I don't think if a team that is showing how dominant they are, like the Lions, I don't think they're going to lighten up until the last possible week. Or they might, because they have tough competition with the Bills upcoming. And then they have a little bit of Bears and 49ers, which are not gimmies, but Bears are conference, or a division, so that's always its own special entity. And the 49ers are weird this year. They're a little extra weird.
I mean, they've been weird for a bit, but...
And then they end on the Vikings, so I feel like the Lions aren't going to be resting until... Like, if they don't rest against the Bears and 49ers, and that's if they want to take the chance of losing a conference seed, I think they're going to play all the way through.
Yeah. And again, it's just like, if you're the Detroit Lions, like, again, I know this is just like the most basic, like, rah, 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 rah commentary, but it's like, again, in what universe would either of us imagine the Lions could be the 1 seed after decades of just mediocrity and nothingness and whatever? And yeah, I think you had to go for it. I think you had to go snatch that chain. And, while the discourse would have been very, very annoying if, they didn't make it, they did. And they did because they believed in them.
Agreed. Alrighty.
Next time.
The Vikings put the Falcons in a blender.
Well, so this is this is both in a metaphysical, like a figurative, and in one case, quite literal way. So the Vikings played the Falcons. Big game for Kirk Cousins because he's back. He's back to the team. I do love the discourse of like, oh, this is his revenge game. He's going to get his revenge. And I'm like, girl, the Vikings made him the wealthiest player, not including like promotions and like ads, in history. He is so goddamn rich because the Vikings gave him basically gave him multiple $100 million contracts. Why would you be mad? You tore your Achilles and they decided to move on.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it was kind of... Well, what's weird is it was a beatdown. And yet the Falcons did not look bad. Well, their defense looked really bad. Yeah, but their offense looked fine.
Yeah. I think this was a defensive loss. I don't think it was an offensive loss because they got 21, no problem.
That's a
resistance.
Exactly. Sam Darnold was on an absolute classic. Like, he was on a bender this game. His touchdown passes were 49 yards, 12 yards, 52 yards, 11 yards, 6 yards. I feel like one's missing in there. 49, 12, 50. Yeah, he had 5 touchdown passes. And the reason why I used the blender phrasing is because on Justin Jefferson's last play, he is wide open. D. Alford completely loses him. I feel so bad for him. I've never seen a cornerback so absolutely lost in the sauce. Basically, Jefferson's on basically in the hash marks. He's on the sideline, running around. At one point, he just falls down, and Justin Jefferson is just waving his hands like a madman as Darnold's running away from pressure. Easy touchdown. And what's wild is you look at the underlying stats, and your eye test backs it up of it doesn't look that bad for the Falcons. They actually outgained the Vikings. They also had 3 minutes on the possession, a possession advantage. But again, Kirk Cousins just has been he leads the league in interceptions right now. I did not realize it had gotten that bad in terms of turnovers.
Yeah.
And it just raises the question of, a lot of people are using this opportunity to clown on the Falcons of oh, this is why you should have drafted Jared Verse or Quinion Mitchell. And I'm like, okay, I don't know how much one individual player fixes defense, but I know putting in a quarterback who's a little more mobile might fix your offensive problems.
Yeah, and they have Phoenix, too.
Penix.
Penix. Words are
Be
hard to
cool if
pronounce.
his name was Phoenix.
Yeah.
It would also fit his career well. But yeah, so
I think.
go ahead.
I think with the rate that Kirk is going, I think next year he takes a more. I think he'll be backseating more, and he'll be in more of a mentory role, kind of like how Joe Flacco was the last 3 seasons, where he just kind of goes like, you know what, I'm gonna just be someone mentor. I'll start a couple games. I'll fill in if people are got the boo boos, but I'm gonna help develop. He does seem like he's helping develop quarterbacks, which is great for him.
Yeah, and it's just like, again, it's tough. Like, I feel like if Kirk knew this was going to happen, he probably wouldn't have picked this. And I feel like if the Falcons realized, oh, this man's like legs are just not quite under him, he just can't get drive. There was an absolutely insane stat that was like, not a single throw last week that Kirk made went over 30 miles per hour, which is the only quarterback to have that problem. And I'm like, man, analytics have gotten really nuts. But also, that is a red flag.
Yeah, because
and
they throw them insanely fast, but also, what a weird stat.
Right? I'm like, I literally am sitting in a car and I'm like, Jesus Christ, the football's moving this fast?
Yeah.
That's nuts. How does anyone catch that? How do you not shatter all your fingers all the time? But yeah, it's just, again, and it's not one thing, like, you know, if you're slinging around the yard and you're keeping your team in it, that's one thing. But it's like, okay, halfway, near the end of the third quarter, into the fourth, it's 28-21. The drives for the Falcons are fumble, interception, touchdown. And that lets, the floodgates open and makes it look worse. And I'm like, you're just not in a really good place either way, because you already spent the $100 million.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it's like, well, that's the advantage of rookie quarterbacks, or like cheap contract rookie quarterbacks. They let you get out of those bad decisions. Again, if Jalen Hurts wasn't good right away, the Carson Wentz thing would have been backbreaking.
Yeah.
If Bo Nix wasn't at least adequate, the Russell Wilson thing would have been backbreaking.
Yeah.
That's like what you need to happen. And on the Vikings side, one thing that someone pointed out is like, it's so weird. Like, again, basically Jefferson and Chase are now fighting for best receiver title. And it is weird that you think about it. It's like Justin Jefferson is weirdly chill for like an all-time great wide receiver.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think of any incidents he's had.
I feel like we shouldn't address it, because then who's gonna be like, oh yeah,
right?
He's got this going on now.
Well, I mean, even just in terms of diva stuff, the angriest I've ever seen him get is when Kirk overthrew an easy touchdown. You just hear him mic'd up go, "Fuck, Kirk, fuck!"
Yeah, which is always great. I love a good getting caught on the hot mic.
Just losing your shit.
Absolutely.
Again, it's the reason why one of Peyton Manning's most iconic moments is him just losing his absolute gourd at Jeff Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, hey, call the fucking play, or run the fucking play like I called it.
Yeah.
Oh, classic. And the other one is, do you have to pay Sam Darnold now? Like, what level of playoff success do you have to get to justify being like, all right, we're running it back at least one more year with, and I don't think Sam Darnold will accept another 1-year contract at this. Like, his numbers were really good this year.
Yeah, I think he's proving himself, especially like, it sucks the situation for like JJ McCarthy, because that sucks.
Right.
But I think that.
Well, it's also agitated because apparently he re-aggravated the knee, which raises even more questions about it. Where it's like, is he even going to be ready for next year?
Yeah, but I think the worst. I don't think it's bad that he's like, Sam is having a great season and stuff, but I think he's making a push. He's going to be making a push for a starter, like guaranteed starter.
Right.
He's not going to be someone's backup. He might settle for like a 1 or 2 year deal, but I don't think
Right.
I don't think he's.
Well,
Uh, I would not project he is as committed to the Vikings after the season is than he would be if he was playing backup for most of the season.
right. Like honestly, it's more of a question for me. It's more of a question what the Vikings do because I feel like Darnold, it's pretty like he's pretty locked in terms of like it's like all right, I looked okay in San Francisco. I've looked really good in Minnesota, and I'm like, if he gets you to the conference, well, someone pointed out Kirk back in the day when Kirk injured himself during the playoffs, it was the Eagles Super Bowl year, and I believe it was like Nick Mullen or no, it was Chase Keenum or whatever his name is.
America's backup.
What? Yeah, he was. Goddamn. All right, you know what?
I
No
love those
cap. No, like,
commercials.
yeah. You know what?
I
Like,
think
look.
they're funny.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be snooty about like advertisements. It's a fun bit, especially because I'm like, oh my god, all these guys do the fucking podcast circuit anytime you want to talk about quarterbacks, and it's like, God, what a great ride of like, you got to say you played in the NFL. For the most part, you didn't play, so you didn't suffer any injuries. Your head's intact. You're gonna get to grow old, and also now you just get to roam the podcast scene because
Yeah.
it's like, well, we need people to talk about quarterbacks, but obviously all the guys who play quarterback are busy right now. So like, let's get Chase Daniel on the Athletic Football Podcast. But like, yeah, like he gets them to the conference finals, and they still they still shank him and bring Kirk Cousins back. So I'm like, do you have to win the Super Bowl to justify this? But then it's like, yeah, I think the big question is, and what will decide like how many years he gets on his contract wherever he goes, is really just going to come down to if he even wins one playoff game, I think he's going to be looking for long term. He'll be like, hey, Daniel Jones got all that money. He got a multi-year contract, and he only won a single playoff game. And they were the wild card. I'm competing for the division still, technically.
Yep.
Which
He's still in it.
you know what's wild?
I think
The
I was gonna say,
NFC North has only lost 3 games outside of their division.
Yeah. Which is kind of crazy. But
Yes.
I think that's in everyone but the Bears.
Yes. Well, yes, the Bears are sad.
But everyone else, they have only lost 3 games outside their division. Which
Yes.
is kind of crazy.
Shall we move on to Seattle?
Yeah. We've been monitoring this NFC West just insane closeness that has been happening. And Seattle is a game ahead. They're kind of making a push a little bit. They're on a little bit of a heater. So it'll be interesting to see how well it continues versus how well everybody else does. Because
yes,
they're only 8-5. The worst teams in the division, Cardinals and 49ers, which I believe the Cardinals were at the top last week or the week before.
Yes, this bumped them down one.
Yeah, they are 6-7. So nothing is locked.
Yes. I will say this game was interesting in a number of ways. One, for the Cardinals, like, I'm very disappointed with this game. It was a real wet fart on their part.
They
just getting kind of stuck in the mud. They were able to run a little better than the week before, but it is like it's frustrating because I do believe in Kyler Murray. I do think he's capable of some really cool stuff. But like the last 2 weeks, he just had some back-breaking plays where he's just not able to like get the most out of the offense and ill-timed interception.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of it's a good player on a not the same caliber, like who doesn't have the same caliber weapons, as opposed to good weapons who don't have the same caliber quarterback. If that makes sense.
I think I get what you're getting at there.
So if you look at, for example, if you look at the 49ers when they were actually like decent last year, you have Brock Purdy, who was like able to sling it towards any of his receivers, tight ends, running backs, whoever, and something great would happen. And you have him, but if you have him do it kind of more like this year, where they're kind of putting up a fight to kind of stay alive. Because everyone's getting hurt, boo-boos across the board. So I think we're seeing like a true, like this season, a true caliber of like Brock Purdy and how good he actually is. But if you look at like let's go a little back for this. If you look at like prime Tom Brady, where he's thrown to people like Gronk, Randy Moss, Julian Edelman, people like that, where it's just like that is a talented quarterback with people on the same talent level, and it's no surprise they were stupidly dominant when like during that iteration of the Patriots.
Right.
And
Yeah, I just like I'm
it
just thinking. I'm like, are they just? Is he just a bad fit with this team? Like,
I don't. It's like Kyler. He's not in. Like I don't think he's a bad fit for this team. I think it's just they've had the unfortunate nature of being on the low end of things, and like there's the whole ACL thing. And honestly,
right,
the video game situation didn't help him. I
right.
feel like
I can't tell how much of my frustration with him is like narrative versus actual play. Which the actual
his
play has been inconsistent, but when it's great, it's great.
yeah
And like you understand exactly why you want him on this team. But I'm like, and like, okay, like the offense has talent, but it's not like blow the pants off your pants. What talent?
yeah. I think it's literally like kind of like what I was just saying, where it's like his talent is higher than his receivers and running backs, but it's like he still needs people better than him though as his weapons.
Right. He's like he hasn't gotten to that point as a quarterback where he can be just the offense. Like he has flashes of that where he just does stupid run around, make incredible play stuff. But it's not consistent enough where it's like, all right, nothing else is working. I'm just going to march us downfield calmly, coolly, and collectively. Meanwhile, on the Seahawks side, I would argue this is an interesting case of like institution, like the institution being the institution, if you catch what I mean. Because it's like you bring in a new coach after Pete Carroll. It's like a new era of Seahawks football. And I'm like, this era is exactly like the old one, where it's like a lot of talent on offense, like a lot of great receiving talent, and yet you're primarily like a short throw, run the ball offense. Again, Zach Charbonnet, who's like one of the best. Man, I wish the guy in front of him would just get an ankle sprain so cook for a bit.
Yeah.
And don't blow it on offense and have like a shutdown defense. I'm like, but that was literally the last like 10 years.
Yeah. And he honestly though, he's making a case for himself that contract season runs up, if he could be on like a lower caliber team's RB1 no problem.
Right. Like well, because I was gonna say, is this another example of like
is it like Miles Sanders, where it's like he looks good with a good offensive line, but yeah,
he looks good in the right system, but the minute he gets away from the talent, and I'm like, yeah, but this system doesn't like staying in Seattle wouldn't benefit him as long as Kenneth Walker's healthy, because it's like the only reason he's getting to show this off is because this is a very much a one running back at a time offense, and the other running back's hurt. But yeah, I genuinely don't know. Like, I don't know who I like the Rams, so I want the Rams to win this division. But I'm like, okay, out of these teams, who would I actually be afraid to face in the playoffs?
Honestly, I would say arguably the scariest team, in my opinion, is the Cardinals because of how inconsistent they could be. Because if they're going off, you're probably fucked. But you have to be waiting for that opportunity where they are just going off.
Right. But I'm hesitant on that just because, again, games like this just underline it's like, the defense has good vibes. They're all buying in. But again, it's a very big lack of dude. Like, they just don't have enough, game wreckers on defense to really compete at the highest level possible. Where at least on offense, it's like Kyler has his moments. Harrison has his moments. Trey McBride is actually maybe quietly the best tight end in the NFL. And James Conner is reliable. Whereas Seattle, it's like, okay, they have Devin Witherspoon, they have Leonard Williams. Like, they have dudes on both sides of the ball. Which, God, I love saying dudes because, it's the most dude bro, guys on a podcast. It's the most urinating tree ass, if you get that reference. It's always fun when people discover that guy originally started out as riffing on Angry Video Game Nerd, where he's just like, this video game's piss in a jar, man. And then he's like, I'll just do Steelers content. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. Again, I guess I'd go for the Rams just because it's again, you see them against the Bills and it's like, it's AJ Smith, Devontae Smith, it's T Higgins, Jamar Chase. It's like if you have two elite wide receivers and a really good quarterback, you can kind of just murk anybody. Like that's the scariest thing to face in the playoffs because it just becomes
what
overwhelming.
Team is AJ Smith and Devontae Smith on?
The don't be a wise ass team. That's why.
Hey, your mistake, not mine.
Anyway, shall we move on to the don't sleep on games?
Yes. Would you care to start?
Yes, this is a weird one because it's so funny because we finally reached that point in the year where there's like a handful of games where I'm like, I don't need to know anything about this fucking game.
Yeah.
Because these teams don't matter that much. Even though I've said the Dolphins might make the playoffs and they're actually, they're 6-7, they'll at least probably have a winning record. But anyway, yes. So the final score of the Dolphins New York Jets game was 32-26. I love the schadenfreude of this game because Aaron Rodgers finally had his first 300-yard game since like the first couple weeks of his last Packers season. Still lost. This went to overtime. I think it's I want to say the two things that I wanted to bring up with this game are it's a very interesting game in terms of this version of the Dolphins is very different from the version we saw at their peak last year when they were calling it like the surf and turf. Because they cannot fucking run the ball. Their running game has ground to a halt. Devon Achane was 14 carries for 24 yards, and it looked worse than that. You watch the highlights, and it really is just like step 2 feet and get a cloud of dust.
Yeah.
Whereas like
it really I was gonna say I don't know what happened with their running game like between years because it's pretty. They have the same running backs, right? I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, no. I believe Raheem Mostert's out. I don't know if I think he's not on the team anymore, or he's hurt.
He's hurt. Yeah, he's still a Dolphin, but he's hurt, I believe. But yeah, and it's just like I don't know what the difference is because he's hurt obviously, but it's just like they're kind of just falling apart as running backs.
They've had a lot of injuries They've had a handful of injuries on the line. But not enough that I think it would make that much of a difference. A part of it is also like, does Mikey Boy have the same problem as Cliff Kingsbury, where he admittedly influences the game a lot by introducing wrinkles, but then doesn't evolve those wrinkles as everyone moves past them?
Yeah.
Like, because again, like people forget Cliff Kingsbury really was a pioneer in terms of like, no, this college thing where they just go 4 wide and just sling the ball from shotgun every play, like that was pretty influential at the time. Not everyone was doing that. Like, hell, you could argue Chip Kelly was actually kind of influential on that too. But he was another guy, like these offensive, like, system breakers who, like, I like, again, they're like Silicon Valley disruptors. They come in, they're like, check out this new thing I have. And after it does, it's like, after, you see the gimmick of it, it's like, well, what else can you do? I'm going home.
Yeah, screw you guys. I'm going home.
But yeah, no, it's been consistent because even the last couple weeks, like they murked the Patriots, but only got 32 yards from Achane. Like, I think a part of it is like
with the current Patriots.
Yeah, right. Like they've checked out, man. This is not the usual like, at least the Patriots defense is good. No, that defense is given up. And it's like, yeah, they're still not getting on the ground. And I think it raises the question of like, does Devon Achane need a really good running mate, or do you need to build a very specific system around him to make it work? Because he had his moments this year, but they just haven't been at all recently. And yet also like a noticeable like increase. It was less in this game where they were playing like, focusing on their stars. This was the first good Jalen Waddle game in 1,000 years. Like, fuck, we made it all the way through Thimblewinter. Kids at home, Thimblewinter is the winter that leads up to Ragnarok. That's supposed to go for like 100 years. But anyway, like Jonnu Smith has quietly become one of their most like high volume wide receivers. He was one of 2 wide receivers who got a touchdown in this game. And yeah, it's interesting that they are like a fundamentally different team than the one we've seen before in a way that just feels kind of inexplicable. Like it doesn't feel deliberate. It just kind of feels like the way it's gone. And I've talked about it. Tua as well has also like, he looks way more like the Alabama Tua, like pre-hip injury, where he's like actually making plays out of structure. He's actually running around a lot. Like, and maybe that's a part of it. Just the quick rhythm hasn't really been there. So it's like, well, I'm not just going to throw it to Tyreek Hill every play. I'm going to have to find someone in the middle who's like slipping through the zone. and like, no, we can't just blitz people on the ground. Meanwhile, for the Jets, this is more. I just wanted to make a point of like, man, it's been a rough year for interim coaches. Last year, like Antonio Pierce, even though it hasn't worked out this year, when he took over in Vegas, the vibes were so good. People were smoking cigars, like they were playing on a little mini basketball net. But this year, the interim coaches have all kind of stunk, except the Rizzler in New Orleans. Like the Jets defense, after they fired Saleh, immediately went into a ditch. The Bears defense, this was their first game without Eberflus. Their defense gave up 32 points to the 49ers, who have been kind of absolutely anemic this year on offense. Like, especially the last few weeks where they haven't had everyone healthy. And someone pointed out, it's like, I think the difference is the Rizzler was like their special teams coach, whereas like you fired the defensive coordinator and the other guy, you're splitting jobs among, like, more jobs are being held by fewer people. So it just becomes harder and harder to run the team. Meanwhile, the Rizzler is just, I can't.
You're saying Rizzler too many times.
I don't like it. But yeah, he worked on special teams. So he just has to show up for 20 minutes and be like, everyone kicking? Cool. And then he gets to focus on the rest of the team. It's a bummer because, I don't know. You want to see, because like these are rare jobs. There's only 32 of them. And you really do want to see like these guys who are given this real once-in-a-lifetime chance to succeed, and they are not, emphatically not this year. Which I guess is good for owners because they won't get talked into, lest we forget, Antonio Pierce wasn't their first choice in Vegas, but Max Crosby kind of boosted the scales. So we're not going to have any of that this year, I can tell you that for free.
Max Crosby juicing? Never.
No. Well, look, let's just say when it comes to, like, professional sports and PEDs, I don't believe in Santa Claus. Or rather, I have a long, sordid history with fighting Santa Claus. Is that a bit I've done on here? I'm pretty sure.
You did, yeah, last year.
Okay, good. I can't remember what episodes I've done that on. Your Don't Sleep On game is the bane of my existence.
Yeah, it's the bane of your existence, but I feel like it's also kind of a real obvious one. It's the fucking Bills versus the Rams.
Game of the year.
Easily game of the year. Shame it was put out at that time. Wait, what time slot was it at?
The 4th slot.
Yeah, it's a shame it was at the 4th slot. It's just one of those, like, it was a grudge match to the end.
Yes.
And
well, you know how it's so funny, we were talking about, like, teams getting stuck in the mud, like how so many games are just like, ugh, God, can someone get a down, please? And this game was the polar opposite of that. It's like, what if we score basically every other drive? Would you guys like that?
Yeah, but yeah, it was an insane game. It ended. Final score is 44-42. Like, how often?
Inexplicably not a scoregami.
Yeah, I believe that.
Yes, I just want to rattle off, especially like the back end of the game. Just rattle off like because there were just a couple sequences in this game that were absolutely drunk in terms of back and forth. Mm-hmm. And like I'll say I'm weirdly calming out this game. I actually thought they were going to lose to the Rams going into the season. It ended differently than I thought it would, and the Bills are in a much better place than I thought they would. I'm more frustrated than devastated with this loss. So here is the entire first half. Touchdown, touchdown, field goal, blocked punt, touchdown, touchdown, punt, end of half. And then the second half, punt, touchdown, 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 punt, touchdown, 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 punt to end the game. So what? 3 punt, no sacks, no turnovers. Yeah. One of the cleaner games of football I've ever seen. And here's what I'll do. I have one hot take for this episode, or for this game.
Hit me.
I actually don't think the defense played that bad.
No.
Now, let me qualify that a little bit. The interior of the defense was very weak. Ed Oliver has having a very bad year after having an all. And Matt Milano looks like someone who hasn't played a meaningful snap of football in almost 2 calendar years. But the cornerbacks, I actually think, looked fine, all things considered. Like, I don't know what you're supposed to do when Puka Nacua is catching, like, sideline balls on his tippy toes. On that Cooper Kupp touchdown, Rasul...
insane.
Yeah, Yes, he had 3 or 4 plays like that where you're just like, how the hell did he even catch that? How do you get the ball there? Meanwhile, Cooper Kupp has that acrobatic catch in the end zone. Rasul Douglas made the play. He knocked the ball out of his hands. The problem is Cooper Kupp was able to squeeze it to his thigh and keep possession.
Yeah.
Like, there's only so much you can do in that situation. The problem, this game was purely on coaching. Sticking with the soft zone that you know Matthew Stafford is licking his chops like a cartoon dog seeing a big old steak on like a hook. Why are you, for their final touchdown, why are you doing an all-out blitz knowing they have that multiple screen pass plays in their pocket? The timeout call on the quarterback sneak that everyone's already litigated 1,000 times. And also, like, it took them too long to figure out, like, the blocked punt and punting to end the half. Like, you have to realize what kind of game this is and know you can't do that. I will give credit to Joe Brady, who completely changed how the offense is done. Like, they went full air raid. They were like, screw it, we're not running the ball. Like, we got to pass to keep up. But again, it's like, you know what? No one is as good as their best day or their worst day. And after having a couple of his best coaching in a row, McDermott really came down to earth on this one. Sean McVay just had him in a blender.
Sorry, side note, the Muppets are back on the Game
Oh,
Awards. Anyway.
Yeah, the Game Awards have no credibility, so they're borrowing some of ours. What credibility?
It's pretty much just
Anyway.
like that. They're so, but yeah. Also, I feel like it'd be bad if we didn't mention Josh Allen having a the world's best game.
Yes, 3 rushing touchdowns, 3 passing touchdowns. The first player in the entire history, like basically since in the Super Bowl era, the only player to ever do that. I'm trying to think, like, the one I keep seeing. One, they finally ran a screen pass that worked. That Khalil Shakir play, see, that's what I'm talking about. Where that guy he's insanely balanced and he has an insane amount of acceleration. And that Matt Collins touchdown pass, the most recurring bit me and my dad have had is the frustration with Matt Collins not being the best wide receiver. But then every game he will make one crazy play, and I'll just we'll just be going back and forth like that was the signing. No, people didn't believe in him. He just hadn't had a chance to prove himself yet with his other teams. But we knew. I also love that play because it's an example of how good Josh Allen is, where it looks deceptively simple, where it's like, well, you're just throwing the ball in a straight line. But to get it where the receiver can lean back just enough that he can slip it past the cornerback, it's just such an incredible feat. Yeah, it's like frustrating.
It's very
like,
impressive.
Just once I would like one of these insane Josh Allen games to result in a win. Just one. Like, I mean the absolute, again, he was so good in the Chiefs game. He was he did incredible things in the 49ers game.
Yeah.
But I mean the one where he breaks statistical categories and
breaks
goes
the
full
world,
just goes full my best game is better than any player on the planet. Which I maintain. It's again, I'll concede Patrick Mahomes is probably a better quarterback. But in terms of one individual game, if we're doing the Space Jam thing of aliens have come to take over Earth, you got one game and you need one quarterback. I'm hard pressed not to just pick Josh.
Yeah, that would be a tough conversation to have. But honestly, though, I feel like Mahomes, when he struggles, he makes it about him and Travis because he knows that works. But Mahomes on his own without Travis, I feel like is a completely different scenario. Where Josh just needs to be put in front of people.
Right.
It's like the reverse Brock Purdy, where he makes everyone look talented.
Right, because there's been a lot of discourse this week about the lack of talent in Kansas City and the amount of talent in Buffalo, and I'm like, again, this wide receiving core isn't elite. Khalil Shakir is one of the better number 2s in the league, and Amari Cooper is better than his reputation will ever have him. But again, it's still we don't have again, Kupp and Puka dog walk all of these guys. They would be either one of them would be the number 1, 2, and 3 on the Bills offense. Again, we talk about point guard, everyone eats, quarterback elevating the town around him, and it's everyone looks better because Josh Allen is there. And it's how many guys, I don't know. I don't want to start a flame war with Patrick Mahomes stands. But it's this is what we're talking about, where it's it's what you're saying. It's and we've seen it this year where the offense has struggled for the Chiefs. It's like, all right, if Travis Kelce isn't working and he doesn't have Tyreek anymore, like, how explosive can this offense be? Where I'm just watching Josh do, like, at the point of the game where they're in pure desperation mode, doing, like, 4-step dropbacks, slinging it, like, 70 yards to Amari Cooper, and you're like, how the fuck is this working? How are they pushing the ball this quickly?
And the answer is nobody knows.
This offense is, yeah, the offense was explicitly not built for this, and it's very obvious the Bills did not expect to be this good right away. And it really is, like, and we'll talk about it when we get to low lights, but it really is so interesting, like, how chill the Bills are in these losses compared to another team who's, like, fighting for a number 1 seed. Should we go to the low lights?
We shall. Fun stat: Cleveland hasn't won at Pitt since like 2002.
All right. You know what? I actually want to test you on this because you play the unscholarly man sometimes. You claim you can't read. Can you rattle off everyone who's been president in order since 2002?
Everyone who's been president?
Yes. So, starting with the election in 2004, can you name all the guys who've been president?
Yeah, there's like 5 of them.
All right.
Washington. Or not Washington. Wow, we're off start.
Oh, boo! This man.
Yeah.
Off the bat!
George W. Followed by Barack for 2 terms. Followed by Trump for 1 term. Followed by Biden for 1 term. Followed by Trump again.
Okay. It was an easy test, but I had to.
You had to
he's going to go for 2. Yes, I had to know. But anyway, yes, the Cleveland Browns lost to the Pittsburgh Steelers 27-14. That is one of the more Brownie stats, especially because it's like this division is famous for being like anything can happen. Like, they're all tough as nails, and sometimes you just throw a hard enough haymaker, the guy you're fighting just falls down immediately, and the ref has to call it. Or yeah, the ring ref is like, nope, they're done. I would be remiss if I didn't point out the Browns did win in Pittsburgh once since then. The playoff game in 2020 with Baker Mayfield, where they I believe the Steelers were like 14-2 that year or 13-3. It was that year they had an insane like 11-1-0 start. Mm-hmm. And the Browns absolutely dog walked them. I believe someone on the Steelers said the Browns is the Browns, and I'm like, you sure about that? And it was crazy because their coach, Stefanski, he wasn't at the game because he had tested positive for COVID. Because that was like the 1 year they did mitigation, where it's like, if you're even connected to someone who had COVID, you have to go into like isolation. Yeah. But that they don't count that because that was the playoffs. Yeah, just kind of a weird game. Like, for a while, it looked like, oh my God, Cleveland's going to embarrass them. They're going to get 2 games on the Steelers of all teams. Like, maybe the Steelers are fake. And then it's the meme that's been coming up of American Dad, where Roger slaps Stan, and he's like, "Aha! Look, a grown man weeping at the hand of..." And then Stan just smashes a table over his head. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't have too much to say about this game, honestly.
There's not much to say. It was really just a fun little statistic.
Yes, it is a fun statistic.
We were sitting a little light on the low lights, so that's why it happened like that.
It is the disadvantage of... Right, well, that's what I was saying. That's the disadvantage of this part of the year, where it's like, I'm not even bothering watching... I'm like, I don't need to see the Browns play anymore. And I know who the Steelers are. Like, how many low lights can there possibly be? But,
at least 3.
Yeah, I'll just say, yeah. There's a real chance the Steelers get the 2nd seed, and I'm like, do we really believe in Russell Wilson? How much are we allowed to believe in Russell Wilson at this point?
Steelers country, let's weld.
Yeah, fire it up. Win the 7th. Well, okay, so they just can't play on... Oh, well, all right, he said win the 7th, so if they play on Saturday, they're fucked, but... Yeah. And again, I know it's supposed to be like as in Super Bowls, but like he's also weirdly religious, so I'm gonna clown him a little bit for that. But anyway, yes. Why are the Eagles always so fucking angsty, man?
I got nothing.
Yeah,
we're a bunch of idiots just trying to make through. That's the only reason I can give you.
Yes. So the
somewhat sense.
If you're not in the loop on the latest Eagles drama, they did. I should point out they won this game. They played the Carolina Panthers and won the game 22-16.
If the
Bryce
Eagles
Young
don't win by 10, the Philadelphia fans think they are about to fall apart. That's
right,
it.
and maybe a part of it's trauma from last year where it was like, we were 10-1 and we were miserable because we lost the fucking Super Bowl. But like, yes, the defense looked fine, not quite as good as it did, and they almost gave up like a 99-yard drive to win the game. But Xavier Legette, I didn't think he dropped that. I thought that looked like a catch.
It looked like a catch, but it was a drop. It was definitely a drop. And I don't know why I keep having like explaining this to my mother and stuff, but like the garbage time TDs against the Eagles aren't always guaranteed TDs. So it's like you can tell when like people are like scoring in the last quarter and stuff and doing like going real far. It's like the Eagles they're not stupid. They're scumbags in the best possible way, where it's just like, oh, you are doing this? Like, it's like you wasted all your timeouts? Cool. We're going to let you run 99 yards down the field, but we're going to make sure you stay in bounds every single time and waste that clock. It's like, it's clear what they know what they're doing when that comes to that. Because, like, for example, if you look at the Rams game from 2 weeks ago, I think, something like that, where it's just like they scored with a minute left with like a deep pass. Can you honestly say that would definitely, like, would they have lightened up that much if it was a closer game? And it was 37-14 before it started, before that touchdown. Can you honestly say that they didn't lighten up at that point?
Right. It's so interesting. Like, again, it's like, okay, like, were they really gonna go 99 yards to win the game? Even with that one play, it's like, come on. Like, of course they let their foot off the gas a little bit.
Yeah.
And, like, it is so funny, again, for all the angst, and even I was, like, listening to it, I'm like, God, they're not giving the ball to Saquon at all. And it's like, well, he still got 20 carries for 124 yards because it's fucking insane. And it's not even like he had a really long play that broke his longest run was 18 yards. It's not like he had a 50-yard one that breaks all the numbers. But even like the radio,
he broke the Eagles record that game. So.
Oh wow! See, we should be celebrating. Damn it!
No, it's Eagles fans. We'll celebrate if we win the Super Bowl or nothing else.
Or win by 30. But like, yeah, it's so interesting because it's like even like the radio. What's his name? The guy who sounds like this.
Merle,
yeah, Merle Reese. He immediately goes, "They stole that one. That one was, they got lucky." And I'm like, dude, who fucking cares, man? You're making the playoffs. It's okay. This isn't the Carolina Panthers team that benched Bryce Young. This is the Carolina Panthers team where Bryce Young isn't seeing ghosts anymore, so he can make cool plays downfield. Yeah. Like, you're fine. Relax.
No, this second half, Bryce Young and Panthers are like, once again, these are the Panthers that held the Super Bowl retaining champs to literally barely winning.
Yes, like this is the team you would hope this is the team they were hoping they would see. The only problem is they just can't get over the finish line and actually win the damn games. They've had 3 straight games they should have won, and then they just lose in the final moments. And I'm like, God, you gotta get one of these. That's when I know you're a good, bad team. But yes, also this drama was followed up by AJ Brown going, what do we need to fix? The passing game.
Yeah.
And I'll admit, Jalen Hurts has been up and down this year.
Terrible game. That game.
Yes, and like you watch the plays, and it's like, it seems like he's just really skittish right now. He really looks like he just wants to run, get out of the pocket, even when the pocket's composed and the play's breaking down. Yeah. And I don't know how you fix that because it's like the line is good, you have checkdowns.
Nervous. I think he was just a nervous boy.
Yeah, and I'm like, if anyone has the right to be aggrieved on this team, it's Saquon Barkley because Jalen Hurts has 11 fucking touchdown runs. Like,
yeah. Once again, Saquon,
if Barkley even got 5 of them, he would be the MVP right now.
Yeah, Saquon's what's it called? Contract does not include touchdowns in the smartest possible fashion.
Yeah, I don't get it. Like, look, they'll force feed AJ the ball a couple times this game,
Alright,
and it'll be
AJ's
fine, and everyone will calm
scored
down.
dominant against the Steelers, so I think it's because I think this happened not last year, but the last Super Bowl push season, where Eagles were looking a little rough around the edges, and then AJ was getting a little upset, a little grumpy, and then specifically the game against the Steelers, AJ just had like 3 touchdowns for like 1,000 points or 20 or 18 points, whatever the math is.
Yeah, I just think, like, I don't know. And I do think, again, to Barkley's credit, like, I do think there's a version of this season where they lose that Saints game and all hell breaks loose, and like he one-man armies that, and I'm like, I feel like I've seen a lot of people downplaying. It's like, well, he has the best offensive line, and Swift looked good with them, and Miles Sanders looked good, and I'm like, no, you don't understand. This man is the glue that's holding this thing together right now, because he's a low-key chill guy who's also very good at the sport.
Yeah. He's been.
But next up is only 5 teams have scored less than Tennessee and the Tennessee-Jacksonville game combined. This is what I mean. I forgot this game was happening.
Yeah.
Yes. I genuinely had no idea this game was happening. And then I also forgot that it was Mac fucking Jones.
Yeah. And it was, like, literally, it was 10-6. The teams that score less aren't even, like, any surprises. It's the usual suspects. Browns, Saints, Giants, Raiders, Bears, like, it's just like, all right, this game was absolute dog water.
Yes. I just want to rattle off the drives for this. Field goal, interception, punt, downs, interception, end of half. They took a sack to end the half. Punt, field goal, punt, touchdown, downs, punt, downs, end of game. Imagine sitting. How long? Like, a football game's like 3 hours.
Yeah.
Like 3+ hours. Imagine sitting. I want to know. I'm gonna look this up real quick. Jags, Titans ticket cost. Jacksonville Jaguars. A single SeatGeek. Jacksonville. Average price of $65. Average price, $65.
So.
The price of a single video game.
Yeah.
The price of a year for PlayStation Online.
Yeah, it's insane. It is truly insane.
The price for like 2 people to go to the movies and see Wicked or something. Like, yeah. I just saw Moana 2 and I'm like, thank God. I think deep down a part of me was like, thank God, like, no matter what you think of the quality of this, thank God I'm watching this animated movie and not watching the Jacksonville Jaguars fail to get fucking first downs.
Yep.
Notable notes. Well, first off, we should really quickly bring up Bill Belichick has signed not with an NFL team, but the University of North Carolina.
That is so interesting.
Yes. So, as best we can tell, a part of it is he's bragging about having some elaborate plan to deal with the NLI and the portal, and there's quietly been talk that he secretly wants his son to inherit the team in like 5 years. All I have to say about this is I do have one hot take on why he's going here as opposed to the NFL.
For shits and giggles?
Well, yes, probably. Because it's like, prove you can conquer more lands. Oh, cool, Alexander the Great. You fucking conquered most of the Mediterranean. Oh, cool, neat. It's your neighbors. But also, I think he's 14 wins away from passing Don Shula for most wins by an NFL head coach. But I think he realizes that it's not really going to matter because Andy Reid is going to blow by both of them.
Yeah.
So
Andy Reid's on pace to get like 1,000 wins or some shit like that. Something absurd.
Yeah. Yes. So, also I was wrong. Belichick needs 26. So he'd need to do like 3 years.
Yeah.
But Andy Reid is already 270. And like, think about how dog shit diarrhea this Chiefs team has looked. Pardon my language. Pardon my Western New York accent here, people. Think about how bad this team has been, and they're still probably going to go 16-1. Like, as long as he's in good health, and as long as Patrick Mahomes is in good health, he will get there, and he will probably blow by it.
I think he's gonna easily get it with
328
As long
minus.
as, yeah. How many does he need? Let's start with that.
He needs 58. So let's say, just to be safe, let's say they only win 12 games a year.
Yeah.
Is that a safe number? Higher, lower, it'll
12's
vary.
relatively safe. That's about 5 years.
Yes, he'll get it done in half a decade.
Yeah. And is it exclusively like regular season too? Or,
yes, I believe. Well, let me look. This might count playoffs.
If it's including playoffs, then it's just like, all right.
No, this is regular season.
Okay. I'll take that.
Yeah. And then postseason wins, Belichick's already there. And Andy Reid's going to blow by that too, because Belichick has 31 and Andy Reid has 26. Because you do forget, he did get to the NFC title game a lot with the Eagles. Yeah. Like, obviously it didn't work out in the end, but he got close.
The Eagles,
so that's like 3.
Finish with him. And I don't blame him. I don't blame Reid. I think it was just a lack of just needed that little extra.
Sometimes it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
There's no shame in that. It's how the sport works.
Thriving in Kansas City. Yeah, so.
Out of curiosity.
That's going to happen real soon. But anyway, other things. We went over it a little bit, but I'll just give the quick recap of the playoff bound. Detroit has clinched the wild card, Philadelphia has clinched the wild card, and Kansas City has officially clinched their division. So they've gone up from wild card to division. And the newly eliminated teams, Cleveland, Tennessee, and the Jets.
Yes. I do want to say one thing on the Jets, though.
It's getting, that picture, it's like, what is it? I think 5 to 6 teams are eliminated on that side, and 2 have clinched.
Yes.
So it's literally just a fight of the middlest amount of teams, and then it's only 2 teams in the NFC that have clinched and 1 that's out.
But I do want to point out, this is the 14th straight year the New York Jets have missed the playoffs, which is part of why you understand how they talk themselves into going with Aaron Rodgers. Because at some point, it's like you just don't want to be in anymore, right?
Yeah.
But just to give you a little sense of just because I made some quips at the expense of the Sabres the other day about how bad they've been. Hold on, I'm pulling it up now. So at 14, why is it so hard to find the stats? Jesus. Here we go. What are the longest NFL postseason droughts? So the Jets currently are at 14, but that doesn't even put them in the top 10 all time.
Oh.
So the top 10 is the Cardinals from 1949 to 1974. That was 25 seasons. Washington from a similar time, 25 seasons. Steelers, 24 seasons from a similar time. And maybe this is skewed because it's pre-Super Bowl era, but Steelers, similar, 24 seasons. Saints, 20 seasons. Cleveland, 17 from 2003 to 2020. We're getting a little more modern. The Bills, 17 seasons from 2000 to 2017. The New York Football Giants, 17 seasons. The Eagles, 17 seasons. The Detroit Lions, 16 seasons. The Cardinals, 15 seasons. And the Packers, 15 seasons. I would be remiss if I didn't point out that 5 of those were when World War II was still happening, and a lot of them were the pre-Super Bowl era, but they still count. Whereas the Sabres, who are currently on season 13 without the playoffs, and most likely 14, this season's been a disaster, they are number 1. The next closest is the Detroit Red Wings at 8 missed seasons.
Mm-hmm.
So, just to give you a sense of how bad it's been in Buffalo, the Sabres.
Yeah. All right.
God, imagine going that long without.
At least an appearance. That's
right.
That would be the part that kills me. If you at least get an appearance, that's something. But
yes.
Yeah. Question of the week. So I saw a bunch of videos of this through my feed, and I'm not saying to do it now. Well, we can make it a separate video. So traditionally, NFL players are numbered from 0 to 99. How many players without looking it up, how many players can you get name their number? So you can name somebody with the number 1, with the number 0, and so forth. without getting a duplicate. So, like, for example, if you say for number 1, Jalen Hurts, it's like, all right, dope. But then you kind of, like, you forget if you said one, and you go, it's like, Jamar Chase won. Like, because you don't have to go in order. The second you accidentally name two people with the same number, you're done. How far do you think you can go?
Chase, Big Play Slay. Is Jordan Addison 3? 3's the one that's fucking me up. I have I can't think of anyone who wears 3 outside of kicker.
You don't have to go in order, so it's also current day players. It's not like
yeah, that's cheating.
Can't be pulling off like freaking like Donovan McNabbs and stuff.
That's fair.
So
yeah, I definitely want to. Yeah, I'd be down to do that one.
Yeah, we can test this out later. Over under, but like just for the question league, over under 40. I feel like is a safe.
I think under. I'm gonna be honest. I think under. I think I'd just freeze up.
I think it's one of those I never established a time limit, so we can see about that. But I think it's one of those ones where I can do over 40, but I can't guarantee I won't accidentally duplicate beforehand. You know? So that's just kind of where it's at.
Right.
I think between the two of us, we would be able to get at least 50 without accidentally duplicating if we're there to stop each other. But I don't think I can get over 40 players in numbers, but I don't think I could do it with a duplicate.
Right. Shall we move on to next week?
We shall. We got some big games.
Shall you give your... Yes, I was going to say, hit me with the scheduling.
We got some big games. Oh, yeah. Kevin...
Oh, we got the games.
Next week vibe is literally the don't sleep on games and Kevin's scheduling corner.
Yeah.
So
hit me with the scheduling corner.
We got two huge 4 o'clock games. We got Detroit versus Buffalo. Huge matchup. A currently in the lead for the conference versus a currently second place, but a very close second place for the conference starting off. And potential late playoff matchup if you catch my drift. It'll be fun to see these, like, Detroit's been proving themselves against good teams, but not in the fashion I feel like Detroit fans want them to be. Like, for example, they only beat the Packers last week by 3, but they only beat the Texans by 3. But then they're playing people like the Cowboys and the Jaguars, where they're blowing them out by like 40-something points.
Right.
Yeah, beating the Vikings by 3. They're really an epitome of field goals win games kind of scenario. So I think this is going to be a very big test for them with another big boy game, because you got Josh Allen who just shows up and breaks records of his own.
Right. The good news for the Bills is their offense matches up really, really good against their defense. With how many injuries they've had on the defensive line and like the middle of the field, Joshy could have some fun. The bad news is the defense, once again, matches up terribly.
Yeah. And then the other big game is the Battle of PA, Steelers versus Eagles. I feel like that's another big matchup. Packers versus Seahawks. So Battle of PA, like both playoff contender teams, but they're fighting for their division. They're currently in the lead, but they're fighting to maintain. I don't think they could make conference pushes, both of them, but they're attempting to. Seahawks Packers, another great, that could be a first round matchup of the playoffs. Not Steelers Packers, Seahawks Packers. So I would say that 4 o'clock time slot is going, or the 2 of the 4 o'clock games and that last Sunday night game are all going to mean a lot more than a good portion of the rest. Actually,
yes.
Bears Vikings, but it matters more for the Vikings than the Bears.
Yes, this will be a very big barometer week for figuring out all right, who's serious about their chances for the playoffs.
We got 2 Monday night games. Kind of lame. Bears, Vikings, Falcons, Raiders. Not really high risk, high reward games. You have the Vikings who are pushing for a playoff spot. Same with the Falcons. And the other 2 teams, Chicago's not eliminated yet, but they're on the cusp. And the Raiders are already eliminated. Hot take. Eliminated teams late in the season should not be in like primo spot games.
Yeah, again, it would be so much better if they announced the actual time slots for all these games. Like, what's the word? Like the week before. Again, you would just have to eliminate Thursday Night Football, but they don't want to do that because Amazon paid them a lot of money.
Yeah, a couple billion. We are also bye-weekless. No more bye weeks.
Yes, we're finally in the home stretch, yep. The fantasy football playoffs. No more resting.
Which I might see Carter in next week.
Oh, yes. I don't know. I'm nervous.
I hope I do. It makes good content.
Anyway. Yeah, but Josh Allen's going nuclear.
Yeah, and I have Josh Allen, so it's fine. And don't sleep on games. After looking at everything, looking what's not a big game.
Kind of a weird week.
It's a very weird week. There's not a lot of reward. Like, Chiefs, top tier team. Browns, bottom tier team. Ravens, top tier team. Giants, bottom tier team. I just went with one of the other 4 o'clock games. I went Buccaneers, Chargers. Chargers kind of be making a wild card
push.
A good one. Buccaneers are looking to maintain their top of the division. Stakes are pretty high for both teams in they're not comfortable scenario by far.
Yes. And it is a weird strength on strength. The Buccaneers running game has inexplicably become strong behind Bucky Irving. They finally abandoned the zone offensive line scheme they were going with that just wasn't working. And Bucky Irving's it's his vision and his pinball ability, really. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, the Chargers have just been very, very scrappy on defense and have just been able to force games to be a grind fest. So it'd be interesting to see how those 2 teams match up.
Yep.
I'm going to throw a dumb one at you.
Is it
Carolina,
Cowboys?
Dallas?
Yes, I was going to
the
other one I was going to pick.
No way you figured that out.
I was going to pick that too, but I chose this Tampa Chargers because it means a little bit more. Now, Carolina,
yes.
Dallas seems like a stupid game, and in the best possible
because
way.
It could be fun. Because
it could be fun.
Because the vibes on the Cowboys sideline were so bad. I'm looking at the Panthers and I'm like, if you want to elevate yourself to good bad team status, if you want to prove no, we're not just competitive, we're scrappy. Yes, this is the one. Chuba Hubbard's looked great. Their run defense is still weak. They, their pass rush has been very weak. Bryce, you're going to have time to throw. Their offense, your defense will look at least competent against this version of the Cowboys offense. It's now or never, gang.
Yep. I think this is a more fun game for the Panthers to see if they could screw up the Cowboys' reputation than anything else.
Exactly.
Alrighty, Carter, send us home for the week.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're enjoying the start of your festive season. I hope you've gotten at least a couple hot chocolates, a little bit of ice skating, maybe a snowman or 2 if you're in the right climate. But make sure when it comes down to it at 4 o'clock this Sunday, you're sitting down with a hot toddy, which is a thing I just learned about, a big bag of chips, and a big old TV to watch some football.